fact that I got to come off the bench, which was very hard for me. I accepted that, and I moved on from that, right? But you telling me that I can't make a 9, 10-man rotation on this team is deeper than basketball.
Welcome to The Jump. I'm Jorge Sedano, in for our fearless leader, Rachel Nichols, alongside senior NBA writer Ramona Shelburne and NBA reporter Dave McMiniman. Coming up, you're going to hear more from Melo on First Take this morning about his exit from Houston and why he thinks he wasn't given a fair shot to prove himself in a new role. But first, we start today's show with some new developments to the story we led with yesterday. Pelicans Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations David Griffin spoke to Sports Illustrated about his future in New Orleans and his past in Cleveland as the general manager. Griff told SI, everything we did was so inorganic and unsustainable and frankly not fun, I was miserable. We also took note of Griff saying about LeBron, I don't think he's the same animal anymore about winning. LeBron posted on Twitter yesterday afternoon, quote, all right, enough is enough. The throne has been played with too much, and I ain't for horseplay. Ether coming soon. We now welcome in David Griffin to The Jump. Griff, thank you for joining us. The Pelicans reached out to us last night because you wanted to set the record straight. What would you like to specifically set the record straight about?
Well, first of all, the fact that I'm even needing to do this at all or felt compelled to do this really speaks to the original point I was trying to make in the piece, and obviously did it very poorly. The whole backdrop of that conversation was about the noise around that Cavaliers team and the media portrayal of all of it. The fact that there was so much scrutiny in everything that we did. When I was speaking about being uncomfortable and, quote, being miserable, it was my inability to deal with that media scrutiny. It wasn't the man himself. It was everything that came with a team led by LeBron James. It had nothing to do with being miserable with LeBron. We had and have a very positive relationship. So that was one issue. The other thing that bothered me the most, and frankly, none of this really matters other than the fact that it's inherently wrong. The story was all designed to be about the Pelicans and how our past and how everything we had learned through our failings, we were going to apply to how we want to build this Pelicans family. And the writer got a great deal of information from many, many people in the organization about our team and what we were trying to do. So I was disappointed that the story really became about me and a sensationalized version of quotes that were taken totally out of context. And quite frankly, none of the information was new information. I've said this many times in media while working in media for the last 2 years prior to coming back. So I was just disappointed with the way everything got presented.
Let's just go straight to the point then. What would you like to say about your relationship with LeBron James, and how would you characterize working with him and with Rich Paul and his agents?
Well, I said this is in the story, and I think the thing that's fascinating is if you look at the story itself and you actually read it in its entirety, the part about the noise around building a star-laden team is alluded to in a very cursory way towards the end. The entire backdrop of the conversation was about that and how poorly I dealt with that. So I would say that my relationship with LeBron and Rich was very strong and remains very strong. As recently as a week ago, LeBron tweeting something about my wife and a charity event she was working with. So I would say absolutely we had a very strong relationship and enjoyed working together.
Griff, I want to ask you about the comment you also made in the story where you said LeBron, after winning the championship in 2016, wasn't the same animal about winning as he was before that accomplishment. And either what you were really meant by it, and also if you did mean it, what were you seeing that was different in 16-17 than he was in the 2 previous seasons?
Again, this was a conversation that started around our failings previously, the things we learned and how we were going to learn from them and apply those lessons moving forward with how we build the Pelicans. And one of those things I took ownership while talking about this, and I have done so, I believe, even on Woj's pod, is that I failed miserably in getting everyone to the right sense of urgency following the championship. And my belief at that time was there's no way anyone can be born in Akron, Ohio, deliver the first championship in 52 years to Cleveland, Ohio, and be the same human being. It's not possible. You're a person, you're a human being. And my fear at that time was that he wouldn't have that same animal-like desire to win. And what we've seen, obviously, is he's gone to multiple finals since, so it was an unfounded fear I had at the time. But the article doesn't give you the context that I was talking about that particular point in time. And again, ironically, LeBron himself has addressed this subsequently to that point in time and said he doesn't have anything left to prove and things similar to that. So again, this wasn't new information. It was just presented in such a way that made it sound like I'm currently saying that, and that is not at all what took place.
Griff, LeBron aside, you also said in the story, everything we did was so inorganic and unsustainable and frankly not fun that you were miserable. You said literally the moment we won the championship, I knew I was going to leave. There was no way I was going to stay for any amount of money. So what exactly made you feel that way?
Again, it was my inability to deal with all of the scrutiny around that team. Everything, the public eye all the time. That was not an enjoyable process. When the only thing that marks success for an organization is winning a championship, that's not a terribly enjoyable thing. Now, having said that, nobody cares whether or not someone's miserable, enjoys what they're doing. We were really blessed to have people in our lives like Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love and LeBron that were playing at a really high level, and a coach like Ty Lue. That was obviously a journey that was well worth going on. But all of the noise around it really sapped a lot of the joy from it. And the piece does touch on some of the things about you become so caught up in results every single day that your joy for the game of basketball got sapped a little bit. And I learned a lot from that. But it was very inorganic because what we did, and Dave, you were with us in Cleveland and saw this happen firsthand. We went from a team that was in the lottery multiple years to a team that LeBron comes back to, and you must win a championship right now. Well, you can't do that in a sustainable way. It's damn the torpedoes, let's go win right now. That's not an enjoyable process from a team building perspective because it's not sustainable and it is totally inorganic. And the piece goes into some detail about comparing and contrasting, by way of example, how Golden State got to go through the process. Learning how to win together, learning how to lose together and deal with that, and then go forward. We didn't get that opportunity, and so that was not a terribly enjoyable aspect of things.
Yeah, Griff, I was there, and I know the pressure cooker it was for everyone involved, front office, players, media, all of us were just this day-to-day tornado you're going through. But having lived that, I guess the question is why? Why make these comments having been in it for 3 years and knowing where the comments can go? Because some people that were also with us in Cleveland at that time, players, coaches, have reached out to me asking why. Why would Griff do this?
Yeah, well, first of all, again, this was done in a conversation that took place at Summer League. And it was against the backdrop of we're doing a story on the Pelicans and everything that you've done in the past and how that led you to want the opportunity with Mrs. Benson and her ownership group here. What led you to this as being the right opportunity, and the ability to do it in an organic, family-first way was what spoke to us about it. And so the conversation that took place was really given as sort of a context of this is the person I am and this is how I got here. I never believed the story was going to be written about me. I believed the story was going to be written about the Pelicans and where we're heading in the future. So it never dawned on me that that would be something that was focused on.
So, Griff, you've kind of been on both sides of this player empowerment era, right? You were there in Cleveland when LeBron decides to come home to Cleveland and also to say, I'm going to sign 1-and-1 deals. Some leverage, but two, he also made over the course of his 4 years there, probably, an extra $20 million by doing those types of deals. And then in New Orleans, you're on the other side where Anthony Davis says, I would like to be traded. I'm not going to re-sign here. Where do you feel that your place in history is on just this particular issue, on the players taking control of their careers and their destinies?
Yeah, I don't know anything about my place in history relative to that, Ramona, but I look at it having been in that circumstance, and this is a totally different era. I think to a huge degree the signature shoe situation has changed a lot of what happens, the mathematics behind what happens. Players have the bandwidth now financially to take a year-to-year chance and to continue to hold organizations accountable for growing and building a winner. And I think you're seeing that more and more because they have the ability to do that. The money is tremendous now in the game. The money's tremendous off the court. And so because of that, it affords players a different sort of leverage than they had before. And I think the whole league is dealing with that. It has nothing to do with David Griffin and my particular place in history. I've dealt with it just as other people have dealt with it. And frankly, if I had dealt with it as well as Sam Presti has, I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Griff, you thought that the story was going to be mostly about the Pelicans and where you guys are headed. And obviously, after everything you've discussed here and in that story, how will things be different this time around for you in New Orleans?
Well, I would have told you that from a media perspective, I would be more well-positioned to deal with the noise, right? I would have told you that I would have learned how to deal with this. But I also think something should be really clear in this, and I can't help but kind of look at the irony of the fact that we're sitting here having this conversation. I'd ask the three of you, had I made these comments about virtually any other player, would it have been a 2-day media cycle? I think you're talking about a guy who by himself is sensationalized for the sake of ratings and for clickbait. And I think that happens with him all of the time. So, yeah, to the point that was made earlier, should I have learned the lesson and not put myself in that position? Absolutely. But nothing could crystallize this more clearly, the point I was trying to make, and obviously did it poorly, that we're having this dialogue now.
Griff, you said it. I also said in the SI article that you think your team can be the fastest-paced team in the history of the game. You and Alvin You and Alvin were around one of the fastest-paced teams in the history of the game with the Phoenix Suns. How does this Pelicans team compare to those 7 seconds or less Suns?
Well, I think stylistically we're going to be different because if you look at that 7 seconds or less team, the way we played actually would have been towards the bottom of pace the last couple years. So teams in general, what this team has a huge advantage with is we've got a level of length and athleticism that really lends itself to playing incredibly fast because we should be able to defend at that pace. And the article did capture some of that. But we're really excited about the youth, the athleticism and length we have, and all of the playmaking we have that should enable us to play again at a pace that makes sense for our talent, and the fit of those pieces could potentially be very good.
Griff, I want to ask you, because you are not just the guy who once put the team together around LeBron James, who now you're the guy who drafted Zion Williamson. So the last we saw of him, Summer League, only was able to play half a game, and we've seen him throwing the football around with Drew Brees. But what can you tell us about your coveted rookie and where things stand as we're a month and a half away from training camp?
Well, he has an absolute cannon of an arm, which you should have seen. Can throw it 65 yards on a spiral. He's done a really good job with us here, with our coaches, with our strength coaches, with our actual on-court coaches. He's putting in 2-a-day workouts right now because he cares about being great. He's really driven to be as good as he can possibly be, and that's fantastic. And again, the piece touches on the fact that we went really long on the human element of this draft. We cared a great deal about who these people were as human beings, and we've called it a recruiting class. They sort of look at themselves as a family, and I think Zion feels a great deal of responsibility to that recruiting class and also to the team as a whole to deliver his best effort, and I know he's working towards that.
Griff, lastly about Zion, what, if anything, has surprised you with your time with him?
To be honest with you, just how grounded he is. And I talked about it from the very beginning when we sat with him the first night, in Chicago after the lottery. He's incredibly humble. He's incredibly team-oriented. And you can hear that from other people and believe it, but when you feel that from him, when you realize how much he does not want to be in the spotlight, how much he does not want it to be about him, it really does make you feel like as an organization, you have a responsibility to protect him from some of those things. And again, obviously I did an exceedingly poorly job of explaining it in the article, but some of what we learned from the noise around a LeBron James-led team, we certainly hope helps us put him in a better position to succeed.
Griff, you seem like you really enjoyed doing this interview.
To be honest with you, like, you three are great. I have no issue with doing the interview. Again, it just proves the point that I was attempting to make in the first place. Nothing could have illustrated it more clearly than the need to come do this right now.
Well, Griff, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciated talking to you. Best of luck this season, and we'll catch up with you.
Thanks so much, guys.
All the best to Meredith.
Yeah, there you go. Take care, Griff. There it is.